Welcome to the Candidates Forum tonight, sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Amherst. Our mission is to help voters be informed and vote informed. Thank you for coming, everyone. And before we begin, would you please make sure your cell phones are off? We don't want those distractions. During tonight's program, we will have 3 panels. The first 2 are for candidates running unopposed. The third will be for school committee candidates who are running to fill 5 seats. All candidates will have 1 minute to introduce themselves. Candidates for library trustee and school committee will be asked to answer questions posed by the moderator. Seated in the front row are timers, and they will signal the candidates by holding up a card at 30 seconds before the end of the time period and a red stop sign when their time is up. I would also like to announce that we have received a ruling from the Attorney General's office that tonight's forum will not violate the open meeting law, even though a quorum is present of several town boards. The candidates are restricted to answering questions that they are asked during a public campaign event. However, candidates may not enter into a discussion of the issues amongst themselves. We appreciate this clarification, which was provided by School Committee Chairman Anastasia Ordonez. Tonight's forum is being taped by Amherst Media for later broadcast on Channel 17. My name is Becky Shannon, and I'm with the Northampton Area League of Women Voters. So, first, we welcome candidates running unopposed, and we begin with candidates for the Amherst Housing Authority, Nancy Schroeder and David Williams. You each have 1 minute for an introductory statement, and let's begin with David.
Good evening. I'm David W. Williams, and first of all, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this activity tonight, Get to Know the Candidate. I am a candidate, an incumbent candidate for the Amherst Housing Authority. I was first selected to serve on the Amherst Housing Authority in 2017, and then in 2018 I was elected to serve a term, and now I am seeking a new 2-year term as a commissioner for the Amherst Housing Authority, and I'd appreciate your vote.
I'm so pleased, David, that you were able to make it. Apparently, neither Nancy Schroeder or Michael Burkert are able to make it this evening. So we appreciate your statement. Thank you. And we will move on now to welcome the candidate running for elector under the Oliver Smith will, Carol Jeanette Gray. And you may have a 1-minute introduction as well.
Thank you very much. Oliver Smith died in 1845, and he left a will that gave charitable funds to people who fell into certain categories. Those categories were, if you're a bride on your first marriage born in Amherst, you can get $100, but you must apply within 90 days. If you're a widow with children under 18, you can get $300 for your first child, $100 for each additional child every year until the kids become 18. If you're a nursing student before your 21st birthday, you can get $600. If you're a tradesperson or apprentice from ages 19 to 21, even if you're working or studying at the same time, you can get $600 that would be paid on your 22nd birthday. We need more people from Amherst to apply for this, and I hope that more will. I'm the only one running, so just in a sentence, my background is I'm a former public defender. I am currently a doctoral student at University of Connecticut in political science. I teach as part of my doctoral program, And my time is up. Thank you to the League for hosting this.
Wow. That is a wonderful legacy. Very nice. Thank you very much. Now will the 6 candidates for library trustee please come forward? And thank you for being a candidate and staying on the board. So tonight, the candidates for library trustee are also running unopposed. They will each have 1 minute for an introductory statement. No. So our candidates are Robert Pam, Lee Edwards, Austin Surratt,
Good luck with that one.
Tamsin Ely.
Christopher Hoffman, and Alexandra Lefebvre. Thank you very much. The League would also like to ask the candidates for trustee the following question, and you have 2 minutes to respond. The timers will let you know when you have 30 seconds to wind up and when you must stop. The question is, what do you consider the most important features of the renovation expansion of the Jones Library? Let's start with Alexandra.
Should we be doing opening statements first?
Pardon?
Should we be doing opening statements?
Oh, I'm
first?
so
That's
sorry,
okay.
yes.
Just give myself time to think while I talk.
And I,
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. This year's theme to celebrate National Library Week was Libraries Equal Strong Communities. It's a reminder of the way libraries bring people together, strengthen open communication, and provide critical resources and programs that allow people to connect and learn. There's no better place than Amherst to witness how one institution can truly meet such a varied set of needs when you have a diverse population. To remain this way, a library must be supported through the vision of its trustees, the generous support by donors, and the tireless work of its knowledgeable and friendly staff. I'm proud of the work that has been accomplished to date at the library around the renovation and expansion project, the formation of a sustainability committee, creation of an accessibility charge, and the continued work toward assuring our staff and collections reflect our community. If re-elected, I will continue to listen to members of the community and work with my fellow trustees to assure our library continues to serve everyone. Thank you.
Christopher.
Okay, my name is Christopher Hoffman. Oh dear, we do have to get this closer, I guess. My name is Chris Hoffman. I've been a library trustee for many years. I'm not sure I had any gray hair when I started out. I'm up here looking for yet another term at the library because I think this next term is going to be a very crucial one for the library. There are a lot of important decisions coming up, and the decisions we make now could have impact on generations to come. Obviously, the most important one, as hinted at, is the renovation and expansion of the Jones Library. We expect the funding from the state grant to be coming available during this term, at least, and we'll be working to put that plan into implement that plan and create designs and blueprints for the actual library. Also, we have just started what I think is unprecedented in the town, at least a new fundraising arrangement with the Friends of the Jones Library to try to strengthen both of our organizations to provide money both for our capital expenses and operating expenses as the years to come. So we'll be starting up working out how that arrangement will work.
Hampson.
My name is Tamsin Ely. I'm running for re-election. I spent my working life in libraries in a lot of different positions and as the director of a community college library. I understand how libraries operate, and I understand the challenges libraries face in serving a diverse population, especially as technology evolves. Libraries need a lot of open, flexible space so that they're prepared for the future. I feel strongly that the Jones needs additional space. The staff has spoken about that, and in the board, and I support the staff and want to move forward to create a library for our community. Thank you very much.
Austin.
Libraries are magic places where children discover the wonders of books. Libraries are transformational spaces where immigrants to the United States study to become citizens. Libraries are essential places where the homeless and the poor find refuge. And libraries are democratic spaces where all are treated equally and with respect. The job of the trustees is to support the good work that is done in our main library and in our wonderful branches in making sure that this magic, this transformation, this essential work, and this democratic work happens. We do that by managing the library well. We do it by collaborating well with each other. And we do it by working well with the town. If re-elected, I will continue to do my best to support the wonderful work done by our libraries.
Lee.
I became a library trustee because I believe in the vital contribution that libraries make to a community's civic infrastructure and to the cultural engagement of all its citizens, whatever their age, economic circumstances, or specific interests. At a time when so many egalitarian principles are besieged and undervalued, a thriving local library is a sign that democracy endures. Trustees support the work of the library's terrific staff at all its branches. We are united with the Friends of the Library in seeking necessary private funds to buy materials and underwrite programming. Our exciting renovation and expansion project will create a building that is efficient and accessible, as the current building is not, so that the library will be able to serve Amherst's future as well as it has served Amherst's past. And I'm proud to be part of all these ventures. Thank you.
And Robert.
Thanks once again to the league for giving everybody a chance to see the candidates. This is something they've been doing year after year. It's very important that they do it. We appreciate it. I am currently the treasurer of the library, which means that I'm the chair of the budget committee, the investment committee. The job means basically trying to make sure that everything is done honestly, properly, and returns on our endowment are the best that one can do and are reasonable. During a previous career at the Comptroller's Office of New York City, I spent my time reviewing contracts and working on investments of the city pension funds, and so that's why I do the things here that I do. As a kid in Brooklyn, I went to the library all the time, and I experienced firsthand what it meant to be able to develop yourself through the library. This is what this library does. It is what we can do better if we have a better facility.
Thank you. And let me repeat the question. What do you consider the most important features of the renovation and expansion of the Jones Library? Alexandra.
So in 2012, the library began a process because of inadequate space needs, and also because we knew that the library systems were coming to their end of life. And what that process evolved into over the last 7 years is a look into our community and what they look like today. And our community today looks significantly different than it did 20, 30 years ago, which means the needs of our community are significantly different than they are 20 to 30 years ago. For example, a recent statistic by the CDC said that there's a 50% increase in suicides among children between the ages of 10 and 24. It's triple for kids between the age of 10 and 14. When you add transgender children into that, it's even higher. We don't have a teen space at the library. One of the things that we would do is create a teen space, which is a place where kids are going to go who don't feel like they fit in or they can find a place to belong. We don't have a large enough space to accommodate the over 300 English language learners that we have that come to seek status as citizens and to learn about our community. We have a growing population of homeless and insecure shelter people. Over 40% of our students in our schools are on free and reduced lunch. A large number also speak English as a second language, and we don't have enough spaces for people to get access to computers, to internet, to Wi-Fi, so that they can seek jobs and they can better themselves. So for me, one of the largest benefits of this program is our ability to really, truly serve our community in a way where we meet every person in our community where they need to be met. I have 30 seconds left, so quickly, as someone on the Buildings and Facilities Committee, what's also really important to me is that we have a lot more damage than people realize in the building. Our systems are at end of life. The 1990s edition, unfortunately, was built in an inadequate manner, which causes leaking both inside and outside and continues to damage not just the 1990s building, but also causes damages to the 1928 building. And I'm done. We'll fix that.
Christopher.
Well, there are so many things, and Alex has mentioned quite a few. One thing that I think is really important is the accessibility issues, partly because I'm not sure we could address a lot of these issues in terms of space for just putting enough space in between the bookshelves, for instance, for people in wheelchairs to get through. From what I've heard, that we just can't really address affordably and easily with the current building we have. Also, as I'm sure everybody knows, there are issues with the bathrooms, like how to get there. I think, if we can address the accessibility issues, that we're going to find that has a lot of benefits for everybody, not just those who can only reach certain heights in the stacks or have trouble getting through the front door. And I'm not an expert on this. I don't know the details about it, but I'm definitely looking forward to learning more and seeing what we can do to address these issues and the ripple effects they'll have on other things that we are doing in the library.
I agree with Alex that the most important point of this renovation is to serve the entire population. The Town Disability Services Committee went through the library. The elevator in the front of the library is not usable by people in certain types of wheelchairs because it's too close to the stairs. We have two separate elevators because the floors are not aligned, and that presents serious problems for people trying to get to different locations in the library. The basement is dangerous. I had a friend have an unpleasant experience, and we had a 12-year-old girl who left the library, and her father said she won't come back because it's creepy down there. And libraries need flexible, open space so that staff can assist people and people can move around easily. That's one of the most important parts of the renovation. It's also, when I think of my experience in libraries, people were not using laptops. They were not streaming. They were not learning how to another language, becoming English language learners. Seniors are coming to all three libraries with their devices to get help. These are not your traditional library activities. And we know that things are changing. Our community is changing, and the way people use libraries is changing. And we must create a space where we can provide the services, programs, and collections that our community needs now and for the future. Thank you very much.
Austin.
Perhaps the most important feature of the renovation and expansion of the Jones Library is that it will enable the Jones Library in our time to be what the Jones Library was envisioned by its original donor and founders. Namely, the library was imagined to be the heart of the community. It was imagined to be a community crossroads. It was not just imagined to be a museum for books. What we have now is we have a library which, in a sense, is doing much more than its physical space can now accommodate. What is it doing? It's serving the elderly through the homebound program. It's serving teens without a teen space. It's serving children, but without an adequate children's room. It's serving as a house for a wonderful set of Amherst treasures and special collections. And we're particularly proud of the work done every day by our award-winning ESL program. So what will the renovation and expansion do? It'll provide a teen space. It'll make the library accessible. It'll make the library more environmentally sustainable than it is or has been. It'll allow for better services for the homeless. It'll allow for dedicated space for English as a second language. And it'll allow for adequate facilities for our special collections. If you imagine, as I do, that the library is a critical democratic institution, its facility must continue to enable that democratic function to play out. And right now, I fear that the facility that we have is inadequate to that purpose.
Lee.
I think there's a lot of agreement among us, so I'm not going to repeat that we want a building that is accessible, that truly serves the community as the community now is, and as the needs of the community are seen, as far as we can tell now, to be evolving. And we want an efficient building, none of which our current building can serve. So I'm going to say something different, which is not about the building, but which is why we need to go ahead with this project now. The project now will be underwritten to a large extent by funding from the state. Whether or not, if we decide not to go forward with the project, the failing systems that Alex referred to at the beginning will need to be replaced. And some of the things, like the atrium to which some people are attached, cannot really be fixed, and it cannot be made to work with new systems. The elevators will need to be replaced to make, insofar as it's possible, to make the building accessible. The cost of doing these, whatever you want to call them, renovations, upgrades, necessary remediations, will be, as far as we can tell, pretty much what the state, what the town would have to pay with the state input. And if we have the state input plus what the town is going to have to pay one way or the other, we get so much more money for the investment. And so for all the needs that we've said, it makes sense to take advantage of the state underwriting to give us the building that we truly need.
The Jones Library was founded 100 years ago this year. The building was constructed over 90 years ago. There have been a number of renovations done to that building over the years in order to meet changing size of the town, its needs. Everything about it has changed. The schools that are kind of the heart of this town have grown enormously over that period of time. This is not the same place that it was at that time. And every 25 years or so, we need to take another look at it, and we need to do things that will bring it up to date. This is the time to do that. If you think about it, what has already been said about the space not being adequate for many of the groups within town who don't get to vote very frequently, the children, the teens, non-English speakers. Think about what has happened in the colleges. The number of people who come who are not native speakers is enormous. That includes both faculty, their families, students, everybody. And we are providing services to that population. We are trying our best to make sure that everybody who has a need in this town has a way of getting to it, and you need spaces to do that. When I was a kid, the high schools did a lot of that. They don't do that anymore. So from the perspective of need, I think it's clear. From the perspective of downtown, I think it is important to realize that the library enlivens the cultural life of downtown. If it is not to be simply a set of businesses or dormitories or whatever you want to think of it, there's got to be some places where people want to go for entertainment, for excitement, and the library is one of those places.
Thank you all for being willing to serve as library trustees, and I appreciate your passion about public libraries. Thank you.
Thank you.
We now invite the candidates for school committee to come forward. This is a contested race. Voters must fill 5 positions on the Amherst School Committee. Right. It's,
Well, that'll be
one is-
weird visually.
No, the numbers are in order of how awesome the league thinks we are.
And I believe that. I'm willing to accept.
Thank you.
Is there? Okay. What are I should be thinking?
It's to you, right?
So for this round, we do have a Spanish interpreter. If there is anybody in the audience who would like a headset to get the Spanish interpretation, just raise your hand. Thank you. Again, we have 7 candidates and 5 positions to be filled on the school committee. Each of you will have 1 minute for an introductory statement. For the introductory statements, let's begin at this end. And pardon? 2 minutes? For the questions, you have 2 minutes.
1 minute for the introduction.
1 minute for the introduction, yes. So,
You want me to introduce myself?
yes.
I will do that. Good evening, everybody. My name is Eric Nakajima, and I am a longtime resident of Amherst and a product of the Amherst Public Schools. I think actually that tomorrow night might be the 3rd anniversary date of my first meeting of the Amherst Pelham Regional School Committee, and actually my service as chair on that committee. And I am still asking for your vote for 2 more years. It's been an honor of my life to do this. I'm the 4th, with my service on the public, on the school committee, I'm the 4th generation of my family to be involved in public education. It's a deep and abiding commitment that I grew up with and was literally kitchen table conversation. But if you think back 3 years, the number one thing I really felt it was important to do was to try to stabilize the leadership of our district, improve the ability of our school community to collaborate and work together, and to start developing plans for our budget, advocating for our budget, working with the community on social and racial justice issues, as well as also planning for new facilities. I think we've made a lot of progress, and I'm looking forward to making more. Thank you.
Peter Demling.
Hi, thank you. So I'm Peter Demling. I'm running for re-election after having served for 2.5 years. I've lived in town for 11 years, had 3 kids go through the schools, variety of experiences, and I've come to see that the real strength of our schools is in the people, is in the devoted teachers and staff that serve our students, and I see our committee's role is in supporting their work. And so we do this in a variety of ways. One is to advocate for fully funded public schools. Our schools are chronically underfunded by the state, and so I do a lot of work to try and increase that. We've had some successes. 2 is I think we really need to fix the charter school funding formula. $3.4 million from our district last year. Think about what $3.4 million every single year could do. It affects absolutely everything we value and want to invest in. And so I see that as a real top priority to try and change those laws. And I also think we need to compromise on a building project solution. I think we need to be fiscally responsible to residents and educationally responsible to students to get a project that doesn't leave Fort River or Wildwood behind, gets them both done at the same time. What that is, we're going to have to define that together as a community and a committee. But I think we need to compromise. I think our town is ready for that. I think our committee should model that. And I'm looking forward to continuing that work. Thank you.
Thank you. Katie Listowski.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you to the League for putting this on, to Amherst Media for filming it, to our interpreters as well. I have lived in Amherst for 9 years now. I have a son at Fort River School in the 2nd grade. I have been a member of the School Equity Task Force since 2014, which is a subcommittee of the school committee. I think what sets me aside here at the table, despite all the experience, is the experience I have in education. I have been a teacher of 7th through 12th grade students. I'm a teacher educator myself. I am an educational consultant and researcher. This is my life and my passion, and I would love to serve the community in this capacity. As a member of the school committee, I'll push for data-informed decision-making processes and turn to the research and best practices that my career has afforded me. Thank you very much.
Lauren Mills.
Hi, good evening. I am a writer, so I'm going to start with a metaphor, if you will. Diversity is cooking potatoes any way that you can imagine, not just the way you had them growing up. Bias is taking a classic song and making up your own words. If books write themselves, if children who are gifted in art or math don't need a teacher to show them how to be an artist or a math genius. In a time when facts are fiction and are constantly debated, a key question for us tonight is, what is the role of public education? Why do we send our children to school if we don't want them to be exposed to other cultures, other ideas other ideas than our own? And at the elementary level, why do we continue to deny that there is more than one way, a better way of educating our young ones in reading, writing, math, when still so many groups of our children are not progressing in these areas at the proper rate and gaps remain? I have 2 children in the elementary school at Crocker Farm, and I am committed and concerned at the same time. And that's why I'm running.
Thank you. Carrie Spitzer.
Good evening. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and everybody here tonight. It's great to see the room so full. So I am a current member of the school committee. I've been serving since March 2018. Like Eric, I am also a product of the Amherst Public Schools and moved back to the area to be near family and also to take advantage of the excellent public schools our community has to offer. So I think I've made a lot of I've really enjoyed the hard work we've been putting in since I joined the committee in March of 2018, and I'd really like to stay on the committee in order to continue that work. Everything from the bilingual education program to continuing to find a solution to our aging elementary schools. So I'm looking forward to continuing the service, and thank you.
Thank you. Allison McDonald.
Thank you for hosting this forum tonight, and thanks to everyone for coming out. I've lived in Amherst for over 16 years. My husband and I have 2 sons who both attended Fort River School. One is now at the middle school and the other's at the high school. We're fortunate and grateful for the many amazing teachers and staff that have educated and supported our kids along the way. That's one reason why I chose in March 2018 to run for school committee, and I was honored to be elected. Our committee has made many significant accomplishments already during my short time on it, including building community consensus around our application for state funding to build a new elementary school, a process which I helped lead. We also approved the new dual language program with central objective of reducing achievement gaps amongst our English language learners and disadvantaged students. And we approved the spending for a facility study on accessibility in our schools and secured the capital funds to begin work on some of the priority issues identified in that study. There's still much to do to advance the quality of learning experiences in our schools, including improving facilities and hopefully building a new building and continuing to address achievement gaps. I hope you'll elect me again to continue working with the district, the committee, and the community to accomplish these goals. Thank you.
And Benjamin Harrington.
All right, thank you to the League for having us here again. My name is Ben Harrington. I'm a single father. I have a 5th grader at Crocker Farms, and I have a 17-year-old who also passed through the Amherst Regional Public Schools. I work in the facilities department as a custodian. I'm a human rights commissioner on the Amherst Human Rights Commission. I also serve as a board member on Amherst Education Foundation, and I also participated with Eric in the Fort River School Building Feasibility Study. Did I say that right? Fort River. But anyway, so my main issue or main area of concern is the condition of our schools. What we lack right now that I'd like to help us provide is a facilities development policy so that whatever solution we come up with, a new school, major renovation project, that we don't find ourselves in the very same position that we're in today, 40 years down the line. My son shouldn't have to deal with that when he's an adult. And so that's basically one of the major reasons that I've gotten involved here. And I'd like to serve with my constituents on the school committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Put the wrong word.
The League will now ask the candidates for school committee 2 questions, and you will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. The timers will let you know when you have 30 seconds left. And we did draw straws for this, so I will say who's next. Let's see. This question is in 2 parts. In your opinion, what would be the advantages of building one large school for 650 children? Alternatively, what would be the advantages of 2 smaller schools on their present sites for 450 children? Peter Demling, start us off.
All right, thank you. And it's 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
Okay, great. So first of all, just a point of clarification. So the compromise proposal that the superintendent proposed last spring that was unanimously supported by the school committee and also unanimously supported by the town council, which was notable given that not all town councilor members supported the previous project, was for one building, maximum 600 students, not 650, 600, K-5 or K-6 grade configuration, a warm child-centered building, and surveys before binding decisions. And this came about because the MSBA, the state grant authority that we need to apply to in order to fund this building, rejected our application last year. And in doing so, they asked us to demonstrate consensus. And this shouldn't really be surprising because the MSBA was with us the last time when this all, when we were divided on the previous project, when about half the town, however you felt about it, disagreed with me and disagreed with you, and they asked us to demonstrate consensus. And so the advantage of one large school building is that it gets both done at the same time, and it really fits that first constraint that we really can't leave Fort River or Wildwood behind. It's also the most fiscally responsible to taxpayers. A day will come when we have to ask all taxpayers to come to the polls and voluntarily increase their property taxes, most of whom don't have kids in the schools, many of whom lived on fixed incomes. And so we need to take our responsibility very seriously about that fiscal responsibility. In addition, the 600 students is actually a little smaller. You have a cohort of the dual language program, which just began, adjacent to other classes within that grade. So it's really a cohort of 250-ish, 350-ish. Advantage of 2 smaller schools is that that's what we know. That's what we are familiar with. That's what we're comfortable with. That's what it has its disadvantages and flaws, but it also has its advantages, and it's worked for us for a number of years. Thank you.
Thank you. Allison McDonald.
I'm also going to start with talking about the compromise proposal that we put forth, which is to address both schools in one fell swoop, which I do think is the more fiscally responsible approach to this. As I was talking to a voter yesterday about this, we can't choose. We can't choose which school is going to go first. And talking about renovating or working on 2 different schools at separate times forces us to choose a group of students to wait for their turn to get adequate facilities for learning, as well as the teachers. But I also think that this discussion about one school for 600 or two smaller schools for 450 is also, it's too soon to have that conversation. Once we get into the building process, we can be exploring both of those options. So it's not an either or at this point. At some point, once we begin the process, we will have to make those decisions, but there's a lot of study that needs to happen at that point. But I do think also from sort of building on what Mr. Demling said, having one school that brings in 600 students, when we have a dual language program right now in a school that's pretty small, we have a cohort of 2 classrooms for the dual language, and then we have 1 classroom for the non-dual language program. What ends up happening is that 1 classroom, it becomes, you don't have sort of the opportunity to build friendships and build sort of a robust group cohort among that group, because you're with that same class all the way through. Having a larger school enables us to have multiple classrooms in a dual language and multiple classrooms in the non-dual language, which is for social and emotional growth and diversity and equity, makes it a much stronger option for those schools, for those students in the school.
Benjamin Harrington.
All right, so I don't believe that we're actually at the point to have to decide between the 600 and the 450 yet. We have 1,300 students roughly altogether. About 166 to 170 of them are 6th grade students. So I would actually like to see what information we get back, what data we get back from the middle school study before I were to commit to anything. I agree that we need a lot more conversation before we actually get to that point. What I do support, I suppose, would be the idea of 2 smaller schools at 450. I believe that's doable if we are able to actually fold the 6th grade students into the middle school and have the 6 through 8 model there. But I think the advantage of that is that, like Peter said, that's what we're used to. We're used to the smaller school model, and that's what a lot more folks seem to have wanted previously. But like I say, we still have a lot of conversations to have. We have to have a lot more people's opinions to be brought into the fold, because we have to get it right this time. We have no other option but to get it right this time. So that's basically where I fit in on that. And no matter what we decide, again, I'd like to see us have a plan to succeed with those buildings going forward. That's what's important to me.
Thank you. Carrie Spitzer.
Sorry, I'm used to turning this on and off at meetings, so apologies. So I did support our statement of interest to build 1 building with 600 kids. And the reason I did that is for reasons that have been said already, but really it's about timing. It's really, you know, I've got 3 kids at home. One's a 2nd grader at Wildwood, and he spends his day in a classroom with fewer windows than this, very little natural light. And to me, I couldn't ask any other family to say, oh yeah, you've got to wait another, 5-10 years until your kid gets natural light, and I don't want my son to have to wait. And unfortunately, I don't think we will see a new school during the time period where he's in Wildwood. But I have 2 younger children, and I'm hoping that the youngest might be able to benefit from a new building. So December 11th, we'll hear back from the MSBA whether or not we get into the pipeline. When that happens, I think it's time we really need to dig in and have these conversations and listen to folks in the community. And I think the worst case scenario would be that we're sitting in this place 2 years from now and or maybe 5 years from now, and we haven't improved our schools at all. Because I think both Fort River and Wildwood are in desperate need of improvement. So in terms of advantages and disadvantages, I live right across the street from Marks Meadow, and I was really sad when I moved into town and learned that it had closed, because now my kid can't walk to school. So clearly there's an advantage of living near a school where you can walk to. But the reality is that our community has changed a lot in the 20 years since I graduated. When I graduated 20 years ago, we had 300 students graduating. When I was sitting on the podium last spring, only less than 200 kids crossed. So times have changed, and I think we need to understand that as a community, and the system that worked, when I was a kid, it's not gonna work for our community going forward. And I really think it's imperative that we find a solution, because all of our kids deserve to be in warm, natural light-filled, green buildings. So thank you.
Thank you. Katie Lesdowski.
Kudos to Peter for drawing number 1. I'm shocked by the question because I think since January we've been really working for consensus in town. So to actually kind of hear this question, it comes as a surprise to me because I think we've seen consensus in terms of our elected officials in regards to the school committee who unanimously voted and our town council as well. So I think the question really is how do we continue the conversations going forward when we hear on December 11th what will happen in terms of the funding. But I think what we need to think about is how do we continue to bring in people's voices and to have the forums that we've been having and reach people to make sure that when our town council members and our school committee members are voting, that they are representing what constituents are saying, right? So whether we trust or not, whose views are shared and such, I think we really need to stop and consider whose voices are being heard. I would say that an advantage to the larger school is that we want to provide access to quality educational facilities to all of our students, and especially the teachers who serve those students who are working in them for years and decades at a time. I would also trust that we have the creativity in our town to come up with solutions to how we create a 650-figure building that accommodates, the various challenges that larger number will come with. I do believe it is a compromise from the larger numbers that we were discussing a number of years ago when we put our original proposal first. So, thank you.
Lauren Mills.
Well, I have talked to community members, parents, and did a little research, but honestly, I feel like more consensus and more information has to be learned. From what I feel now and what I think, one large school would be able to attract obviously more students from other areas, other neighborhoods, and accommodate the newer children that are coming into the Amherst community. And also a larger school would obviously be able to hold more activities and give access to more the community. The two smaller schools model that we have now, I've seen the Fort River, the structure of the building, and I think the building is really strong and has a lot of nice space, wide space. So, but the parents, they want renovation or they want a new school. So the budget, that's not my forte. That's not my first. That's not my first thing that comes to my head is how are we going to pay for it, but what do the parents actually want, and second is how do you pay for it, so.
Thank you, and Eric Nakajima.
Great, thank you very much. The number one thing I'd want everyone in the room to know about what I'm gonna bring to the school committee is my commitment, ideally within this next 2-year term, to pass and approve, through all the approvals in this town, a new school project that would allow us to replace Wildwood and Fort River elementary schools with new facilities. That is something I deeply believe, and anyone who's been following me on the school committee, but also the committee as a whole, would know that we know the schools, we're involved in the schools. I think many of you are aware of their deficiencies, and the reality is whatever happened last time, this time we have to get to an approvable project that the town could support. So that's and so the idea of 450 or 600, which was the compromise position, to me, whatever gets us to those new facilities that allow us to replace both Fort River and Wildwood is what I'm in favor of. I would argue that there are virtues to the 600 student proposal. One, I would argue there's more surety. You can imagine with less jiggering around at Crocker Farm or the middle school, you can find ways to get to a building project, one. Two, it puts less impact fiscally, likely, we'll find out more details later, but likely puts less fiscal pressure on our tax base. And three, if you look at Wildwood and Fort River, one of the virtues of being around town as long as I have and having a mom who taught at Fort River shortly after it opened, is that school was designed for like 800 students or something like that. Granted, the size requirements were different back then per pupil, but the reality is, as facilities go, we already know what the 600 or 650 school looks like. It's the schools we treasure now. What we need is new ones. You're about to tell me to stop, so I figured I'd stop.
Thank you. For our second question, let's just begin with Eric and work our way down the table. Please explain your thoughts about grade reconfiguration in the elementary schools.
Grade reconfiguration. Well, there isn't currently a proposal for grade reconfiguration, and so I don't think this is going to be a live issue that a new school committee is going to be dealing with, put forward. I'm just going to be very blunt. When you put it in the context of a school project, if you listen to what I said to the last answer, I passionately mean that. There are other things I deeply believe in, like expanding our Comandantes program and other things that we're doing, or a restorative justice program in the secondary level. There are lots of great things we're doing and things I believe in doing, but what I am not interested in doing is a layering on a significantly deeper change or structural change in curriculum within our elementary schools if that ends up diminishing consensus and disrupts our ability to get a new school building. I don't think that's wise. I think that's why it's wise that the superintendent pulled back. If somebody's wanting me to litigate 2 or 3 years ago, I would simply say that there were a lot of benefits to the proposal, particularly for kids with special needs and the quality of the facilities and programs, the integration of the programs that were being proposed. I also think there were deficiencies in terms of increasing the transitions between grades. That sounds like a punt because it is a punt. This is not going to come up again. I don't believe it will. I don't believe it should. And I really honestly think we should focus on implementing strategic plans we have within our elementary schools, which we have wonderful ones you can learn about. And I think we need to focus on doing some of the accessibility upgrades, improving Crocker Farm, expanding Comandantes, and then really pushing on building consensus in this town so that when we get to a new project, we can pass it. And I think we can get there if we keep focused on doing this work and focused on collaborating and working together, which I also think we need to commit to doing. Thank you.
Peter.
So what do I think about grade configuration? So one, I think that it is a core part of the compromise proposal that the superintendent just proposed, that the school committee just supported, and the town council just supported, which is reconfiguring the grades as was done in the previous project is off the table. And I want to be very clear that my personal preference is still for the past project. And I could spend the next minute and a half talking about why that is and what the values are of having consolidated grades in the Early Childhood Education Center, but I feel really strongly that we need to put our personal preferences aside in the spirit of compromise. And compromise is all nice as a spirit to talk in the abstract. Where the rubber hits the road is when you really have to give up things. And the proposal that the superintendent put forward of not entertaining grade configuration is not my preference. It's not my ideal. But I definitely support it because I feel like the urgency to get our kids into buildings that are adequate for their education is so great that we all have to put our personal preferences aside. I think this is going to be a little hard for some members of our community. That's why I feel like if elected to school committee, any candidate really has kind of a second level obligation and duty to model what it is to compromise. However, we felt about the previous project. The other thing I would say about grade configuration is that you might not know, but we have a grade span advisory group happening right now, looking at potentially moving 6th grade to the middle school, because that involves both our elementary and our regional district. It's a number of school committees. I believe Ms. McDonald is on that grade span advisory committee. But that's one way to reduce the number of students that would have to go into a new building. That's one way to get to 600. And so that grade span advisory group is also looking at, is it socially, emotionally appropriate? Is there a curricular advantage for 6th graders to be in the same building with 7th graders and 8th graders? So I think it's the purview of school committees. It's not the purview of building committees. And I'm confident that the next building project will not be reconfiguring grades.
Katie.
Thank you. I interpreted this question, the grade reconfiguration, in terms of the point that Dr. Morris brought up in his January presentation, where he said there would be perhaps a K through 5 school or a K through 6 school. So I'm thinking more in terms of where are we putting 6th graders. If there's the need to make space, which as our numbers show right now, we have about 730 or 40 students between Fort River and Wildwood. We need to reduce that by about 150 students, which is around the population of a 6th grade cohort. So again, speaking from my educational career, having taught 7th through 12th grade, I could see real advantages to moving a 6th grade to the 7th and 8th grade building, and keeping them kind of as their own cohort, and including Crocker Farm as well, and making more space at that location. To have 6th grade bond and get to know each other before they learn and meet, before they meet their fellow classmates from other towns. So creating kind of a niche within the middle school for 6th grade, I think would provide a great solution. I know a lot of people were thinking in terms of, well, the 6th grade have such great leadership potentials in those elementary schools, but I think that can be fostered even starting in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, so that they have that and that they're ready to go for 6th grade. They solidify themselves, so they're ready for the challenges of 7th and 8th grade, which again, having taught that age group, is a very vulnerable age where they're trying to get to know themselves. So that's how I'm interpreting grade reconfiguration. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Lauren.
What I would say is also my understanding is that the proposal that will be decided on in December would put a new school from K through 5 or K through 6. And Wildwood is right next to the middle school, so it would be, a plan, or could be discussed whether the new school, if it is on the site of Fort River, would have more classrooms for grades 6 or 5th. And obviously those grades that are closer to the middle school, 7th through 8th grade, the age group would be consistent, and so that's pretty much what I have to say.
Thank you. Allison. Oh, I'm sorry, Carrie.
Hi. So I similarly started to think about the middle school when I heard the question, but I would just like to reiterate that I agree that the idea of reconfiguring the grades in the way that was discussed in the past project is something that is clearly off the table, at least for those of us who were on the committee for the past year and a half or so. So I'm gonna take my time and talk about the middle school, but I agree. I think it's still a little early. Like, we're gonna find out on December 11th. So I think the advantages of bringing the 6th grade into the middle school are, we've been talking about changing the math curriculum, and part of the challenge is having the 6th graders be prepared for math in the middle school, and this would definitely help there. It's a model that I believe works in other communities around the country, having 6th through 8th grade. And when I was at the then junior high, it was 7th through 9th grade, so you had 3 years in that building, and right now our kids only have 2 years in that building. So I think it kind of creates this first year you're just getting to know everybody, getting to know the building, and then the next year you're getting ready to move on to the high school. So I think if we could have 3 years in the middle school, it would probably foster more community there and have some real advantages. But I kind of do want to separate these issues a little bit about meeting the needs of the elementary school buildings for renovating and replacing those buildings as needed, and this this decision that would affect how we teach and how we build community in our schools, though they are definitely intertwined.
Thank you. Allison.
And so the disadvantage of going towards the end is, well, advantage is I get to hear everybody's, but disadvantage is a lot of the things have already been said. But I will reiterate that what Ms. Spitzer just said, which is as a community, we learned through our prior project that a major grade reconfiguration is something that we as a community can't accept, or at least it will stand in the way of getting us to compromise on what to do with our elementary school buildings. We're not looking at that. We're looking at a way to build community consensus around a plan that gets all of our students and our teachers in elementary schools in warm, accessible, and child-friendly buildings. That's number one. So a major reconfiguration will stand in the way of us getting there. So that's off the table. When we talk about the middle school, the 6th grade to the middle school, which is part of, it's one option for getting to the size school for an elementary school building. It isn't the only way to get there, and so there's no decision that's been made on that. But as Mr. Demling mentioned, we do have a middle school grade span advisory board that has been convening since the spring, and will be continuing in January, and I am a part of that. It's a large group of people that has broad representation from across the community. We have educators from the middle school, we have educators from the town elementary schools, as well as some of the regional, the surrounding towns that are part of the region, but not part of Amherst. And we're all working together. There's parents as well. And we're looking and exploring at the pros and cons of 6th grade at the middle school, as well as 6th grade staying in the elementary school. And community outreach and learning and sharing and listening to the community is a critical piece of that group's work. So no decisions are going to be made without involving the broader community. And then I'll also add, sort of building on Ms. Spitzer, is that there's a lot of curriculum learning. Curriculum for 6th grade is really designed 6th through 8th grade. So there's a lot of advantage both for the students as well as the educators that are working with the 6th grade to having them together with fellow middle school educators. And I'm out of time, sorry.
And Ben.
All right, so I sort of have a similar position to Eric's, is that there's a goal we need to get to, and there are certain things we need to do to get to that goal. One thing I'm not willing to do is to hash out any old fights regarding grade reconfiguration. So again, the previous plan, not something that I could support. I'm interested in finding out what kind of data we get from the advisory board. About 80% of middle schools throughout the country are 6 through 8 and that follow that model. We're also Amherst, so we don't necessarily need to do exactly what the rest of the country is doing. We probably won't. But I do definitely see the advantages of combining them in terms of community, in terms of the development of children. There's a difference. You see it more towards the end of the school year than the beginning, but between 5th and 6th grade, there is a monumental difference past the winter break. So I think there are benefits to that, but again, these are just thoughts. We haven't had the conversations that are going to get us to that point. That's what I think. I think there's a consensus here that we do need to discuss this, and that's what we need to do. And so that's pretty much my stance on it.
Thank you. Please give all these fine candidates a round of applause. And thank you all for coming out tonight. Please tell your friends that Amherst Media will be airing this program on cable channel 17 up till the election. And don't forget to vote on Tuesday, November 5th. Polls are open from 7 in the morning until 8 at night. Thank you so much for attending tonight, and thank you all candidates for running for office in this most important time. Thank you.